All right, Chris.
Howdy and hello and happy Sunday to everybody. In my backyard here in New York, New York, the birds are chirping, the weather is beautiful, uh, the air is beautiful, and the fact that I'm with Dr. A is beautiful, of course. Dr. A coming to you there from Florida. The good man that he is, he needs no introduction the world over, not just the state over, the world over. You know him very well, does many things, law enforcement extraordinaire. We call him Order. They call me Law. But it's just good to be with you guys. And of course, it's good to be with you, Dr. A, every day and twice on Sunday. And so let me just say this for all of you. Got a lot of good things to talk about today. We condensed it to a nice half an hour special. We want to talk to you, first and foremost, about Dr. Fauci versus Trump. There appears to be a little bit of conflict there with respect to what's what and who's who. When I say that, meaning what should we do moving forward? Should schools be open? Are businesses moving to open too soon? Are states moving to open too soon? Out of that, we want to talk to you about some hot topics, obviously involving the tragic, horrific, and most untimely death of Ahmaud Arbery. We know that that's hit everybody, and it's hit us all close to home. And we try to make sense of it, and we're going to discuss that. There's also a case coming out of, and we'll give an update to that for sure, a case coming out of Kentucky, a young lady who, unfortunately, Breonna Taylor, you see it there, she's shot and killed in her own home. So we want to talk about that. But then finally, the big treat we have for you is that we want to celebrate you. Dr. A thought it was very important, and I agree. He's a psychologist, so he wants to make sure you're good, that, we make sure that you get your just desserts and everything else. But class of 2020, we just want to give you a shout out. And we want to talk to you a little bit. So we're going to do that. And with that said, we're going to get into our first topic, which I will hand it over to my dear friend, my colleague, my partner in crime. Well, I'm crime, he's Order. I keep him out of jail. He, was accustomed to putting him in there. We want to talk to you about the whole Fauci issue. There's a large discussion about the issue of when we should open up, when schools should be open, when kids should be going back to school, and of course, colleges and whether universities should be opening up in September. And you see them there, Trump and Fauci, one with a mask, one not, one concerned about opening up too soon, one perhaps not overly concerned about that. And with that said, I want to throw it to my friend, Dr. A, to give us his thoughts with respect to the Trump-Fauci debate and what should we do with schools moving forward, whether it relates to colleges or, of course, high schools, grammar schools, you name it. I give it to you.
My man, Joey Jackson, on the scene. Joey, well, let me say this, Joey, first to you and to the audience. There's a lot going on out there this week, particularly as it pertains to this country opening back up. And we've discussed this on Sundays before, the importance of us being able to open this nation back up, and being able to open back up in this very strategic and calculated kind of way, because we have to balance the economy of this nation and get people back to work, but at the same time, be able to keep people in the community safe. Look, I tell you, Joy, this issue between Trump and Fauci, to me personally, is really not that challenging. You got a president of the United States who has his own ideas through his own leadership, has to perform his functions. And also we have a scientist who's sharing his expertise. And I think it's something to be said about what the both of them are saying. But I think we're at a point right now where the American people are going to have to pay attention. I think we're going to have to make sure that we follow the CDC guidelines and regulations as this country begins to stand back up. And but at the same time, too, we have to make sure we're very, very alert, very cautious, that we're listening, paying attention, because if the numbers continue to decline, this thing between Trump and Fauci will eventually abate itself. But both of them have a huge responsibility in terms of, one, getting this nation stood back up, and both of them believe that, but at the same time doing it in a way that's, that's safe. That's kind of my thought of it when I think about it, Joey, but certainly like to hear what you think about that.
No, without question, obviously I don't think you're wrong. I think the fact of the matter is, and I know I'm getting a little bit of glare. There we go. I'm glareless now. The magic of live TV, or live Facebook, as it were. Look, I don't think you're wrong at all, Doc. I think there's a delicate balance, though. I think, when it comes to the businesses, when it comes to the economy, people are hurting. Unemployment, we know, 33 million unemployment applications. We know that businesses and small businesses are being crushed. We know that people just generally who want to patronize those businesses, whether they be barbers, whether they be, nail places or other places, people want to go, right? They want to get back into their normal routine. And so I get that. I think there's a huge economic prerogative. And I think you saw that in play, Doctor, when as it related to the Senate confirmation, I'm sorry, not the Senate confirmation hearing, the Senate hearing that Dr. Fauci appeared in, I think it was this past Tuesday, where there were a couple of senators getting testy with him. I know Rand Paul had a lot to say. And I think that there's a delicate balance. People certainly want to get back to work. People want to get back to their lives. We have to get this economy open and flowing. People want to get back to just generally shopping and doing other things. At the same time, I think Dr. Fauci's concern, Dr. A, is really a public health one. And he said at the hearing, listen, I'm not here to opine about economics or the economic welfare. I'm just here to tell you that if you guys do this too soon, you're going to relapse. And not only is that going to create a public health issue, but it's going to create an economic issue because we're all going to have to come back inside and business have to close again, and this time for longer. So listen, I'm not here to tell you, Dr. A, nor any of you listening, that either A, I'm an economist, I'm not, I'm a law guy, or B, I'm a health expert, I'm not, but I have opinions like everyone else does. And, my opinion will continue to be that we have to put people's health first, and health is a major priority. And then we have to look at profits and economics second. And having said that, understand the source, right? I'm talking to you from New York. The relevance of that is not only New York's a great state, but the relevance of that is that New York is one of the few states that still remains closed. California, of course, I think DC is still, having some closure, but we've been hit particularly hard, Doc. So we've been closed. But I just think at the end of the day, just in summing up this topic, Doc, the last thing I'll say, and then certainly I open it to you to state your piece, and then we'll move on, is that we just have to be very careful. And at the end of the day, I think you said it, and I don't want to steal it from you, but, like everything else, all your good thoughts, whether we be having breakfast, lunch, or, on the phone, all your good thoughts I steal anyway. So did I say that in public? So let me steal it this way. I think people have to exercise their own judgment, and they have to do ultimately what's best for them. But I think in my prerogative, I think we just need to be safe.
I think essentially we're saying the same thing, but I'm going to go a little bit step further, is that, yes, we have to open up cautiously. We got to get people back to work, got to get America back to work, and we got to defeat this virus as well, too. But I think it's also important to recognize the fact, you take New York City, who was really, that city still is struggling, even though the line is flattening, and thank God for that for New York City. But different parts of the country have had a different experience with COVID. And I certainly don't believe that you can use one brush and paint the entire country the same way. So I think each part of the country, state, community, that's left up to the federal government, working continually in collaboration with their state governors. And governors have an opportunity to say, hey, we're doing such and such in our state. And yes, we need to open up more slowly. Some need more open up maybe more slow than that. I'm here in the state of Florida, for an example, where I think the governor has done a tremendous job in terms of balancing the Florida economy along with also COVID-19. And it is a delicate balance, and regardless of who you are, you're in that leadership position. And I can tell you that, having been a leader in a number of different positions across the country over the years, you're going to be criticized either way it goes. So you do the very, very best that you can. But for the American people, Joey, regardless of what community you live in, whether you're in New York, you're in Florida, you're in California, Georgia, wherever, is that you do all the necessary things that the CDC is still suggesting that we do as we open this country back up. And I think essentially, in terms of how we're defining it, I think we're saying the same thing, my friend.
Indeed. Many of you may have heard the beeping behind me before or around me. That is just to you guys in 2020, the class of 2020, people around here are expressing their love. And we're going to get to you, we assure you. But Doc, I think you got the last word on that. And I don't disagree with anything you say. Can't paint it with a broad brush. Everyone's different. Let's just hope that this thing ends. It ends soon. and that it doesn't come back. Boy, I don't want it to come back. So I guess I want to transition from that, if I could, and want to talk about something that obviously is very tragic, very sad, certainly could have been avoidable and preventable, and that's the Ahmaud Arbrey. And I just, wanted to talk with you, Dr. A, just in updating. We know that there have been a number of tapes that have surfaced with respect to, just to be clear, apparently there is a home in or around the area where this incident happened in Brunswick, Georgia. And that home was under construction, and the homeowner, Mr. English, has released surveillance tapes of inside, which demonstrate, we see there an image, which is believed to be Mr. Arbrey. But there's an indication that there are tapes that preceded that day where there was someone who was in there. And in fact, there is also an indication that there were a number of other people besides him, that is Ahmaud Arbrey, who have been at that location. And so I guess the discussion that I want to have with you is what relevance, if any, those tapes have that are being released, which demonstrate that there may have been someone else, or even Ahmaud Arbrey. We'll start with him. What, if any, relevance would there be to you, Dr. A, that there is a tape that's surfacing and tapes that are surfacing showing that there's someone, perhaps it was Ahmaud Arbrey or someone else at some prior time, who was in that structure that we just saw? Do you think it has any relevance?
Well, let me say this first, Joy. I spent 40 years in public safety and law enforcement, and I oversaw 2 major police departments in this country, and also spent 5.5 years in the Department of Homeland there in Dallas, Texas. So my whole career has been around public safety and law enforcement. And I will say to you the same thing I said a couple of weeks ago, and this became very evident to us around this case and the horrific interaction that took place there. Whatever he was doing in that house will not ever justify him dying the way that he did. And that's for any human being. Because many of us, if we think about, we jog through our neighborhoods, walk through our neighborhoods. I got 3 houses under construction across the street from where I live currently right now in Pensacola, Florida. And there are no trespassing signs out there. But if I want to walk over there as a casual neighbor, if I want to jog through the community and take a look at this house that's under construction, what's wrong with that kid or anyone else imagining me, for an example? Wow, wouldn't it be great if I could buy my mother this home? Wouldn't it be great to be able to say, wow, this is going to be a nice addition to the community, whatever his motive was? Because what we do know, regardless of who's on that video, and we saw him running down the street, he didn't have any 2x4s in his pocket. He didn't have any televisions in his pocket. And even if he did, it was not the responsibility of those 2 gunmen to chase him down and to kill him in the middle of the street. It is just unwarranted. But here again, I'll share my sentiments around the fact, as I had before, this is an investigation that was going to give the appearance of being swept away. And when you have the Georgia Bureau investigation at the request of the community and at the request of the governor in Georgia, and who in 36 hours can go out and put together probable cause to make those arrests, there is something inherently wrong with that judicial system there in that county, Glenn County. And that's what really needs to be looked at just as much as these 2 men are, but also that DA and those who, in my opinion, just totally dismiss their responsibility and don't have no damn business being in the business that they're in. Because when you serve equally to all people, regardless of who they are, where they're from, whatever the case may have to be. And I know a lot of lawmen in this country from a lot of different persuasions, backgrounds, whatever. And one thing we all agree with is that if we're going to serve everybody the same way. And that DA's office certainly did that community an unjust move. And I hope that through its investigation, it is learned. I am really just disturbed, Joey, as a retired lawman, that this went on in that community the way that it did.
Very well said, Doctor. Very well said. And we appreciate all the comments that were coming in, Doc. I know you were, in the middle of saying some very impressive and compelling things, so you may not have seen them, but there were comments that were coming in, and we appreciate all of them and all of you obviously participating and weighing in. Let me just take it a step further of what you said. the surveillance doctor was coming in as it related to someone apparently being in the place at a different time, right? We all know about the surveillance of that day, that is February 23rd, where we understand he was there. That is Mr. Arbrey. He was there for a period of time, 3 minutes, I believe, at which time he then left. There's some indication that he might have been in there to get water or do something else. In any event, there was also tape released, and we saw it from the cell phone text messages that we saw on the screen. There's some indication that in December that there was someone there. You see it there, right? Your neighbor is Greg McMichael. Greg is a retired law enforcement and also a retired investigator from the DA's office. He said, please call him day or night when you get action on your camera. The date below that is February 11th. The date of this text message, I believe, is December 20th. If we can just see that on the text message, if we put it up again, you'll see when the text message was sent was sometime in December. The relevance of that, of course, is what does that all mean? What does it mean that we have a particular footage that's released of some different time that he was there? And this is the legal answer. What happens is that the defense is going to want to show the tapes from different times that relate to that house. Why? Because they want it to use so that they can show that their client, the McMichaels, were being informed by prior break-ins, that's what sprung them into action, that they knew that there were people that were meddling around the neighborhood because at some prior time they had inquired about it. And now was their time to get them. And so therefore it goes to their state of mind with respect to why they got guns, with respect to why they got into their truck, with regard to why they followed them, with regard to why they stopped them. So the defense very much wants that tape in from another time to use in order to show that their clients were justified. Here's what the prosecution says, and here's what I say. The issue is not what happened in December. The issue is not happened in January. The issue is not what happened the week before, the month before, 3 months before. The issue is what happened that day. And so in my view, I don't even think a judge is going to allow tape at some other time to come in as evidence in this particular case because it has no relevance or bearing with regard to what happened then. If you're in my courtroom and I'm presiding, I want to know about the facts of that day. The only video I'm allowing, if I'm a judge, is I'm allowing the video as it relates to February 23rd. And in that video, it doesn't show him taking anything. And in that video, it doesn't show him damaging anything. And in that video, it doesn't show him meddling with anything other than going into the home. Furthermore, with regard to that video, what it demonstrates is that he was not committing a felony. Why is that important? Because in the event that it was a felony, now you can exercise a citizen's arrest because you could suggest that he was escaping. That's problematic, though. One, you have no felony. Number two, there's no indication that he was escaping or attempting to escape. There's an indication he was just looking and then he left. And so therefore, there would be no reason or basis for them to be following him, to be taking arms up against him, much less to be shooting and killing him. And so at the end of the day, Doc, it comes down to that tape of February 23rd, and anything else is a red herring. Anything else is irrelevant. Anything else has no business into what happened and in explaining what occurred. And so I think that's what we're going to see moving forward. And I think it's just a sad and tragic case. And I hope him and his family get justice.
And I think at the end they will. I think you have a community there, not just in Georgia, not just in and around Atlanta and Glenn County, but I think across this country, Americans, all Americans, are asking the question, what in the heck went on here? How could this happen? And everybody's paying attention to it. But these are the type of events like we just saw there. In Glenn County, Georgia, we have to be able to stand up against. I tell you, Joe, as I told you before, over the course of my career in recent years, I've been there during the course of a lot of police-involved shootings. I've been there to the course of a lot of citizens being involved in things they should not have been involved in. But one thing that we always led with and led by is that we're going to do an in-depth and unquestionable investigation. And in this particular case, you had a police report that was written, 2 men who went home that night. The whole story was based on what they said because the dead man can't talk. And it was very, and even if that was not in their intent, meaning the DA's office, there is a clear perception or clear idea that they were going to sweep this under the rug. And quite frankly, you did not just need a video to question or to investigate this in a way that should have been done thoroughly. Even without the video, you have a dead man who is unarmed. There should have been an in-depth investigation that went beyond that of what we just saw. That's what's really horrible. That's what's disturbing. And that's why I think that DA needs to remove herself immediately from that office. And I certainly do welcome the Justice Department to come in, do a fair, impartial investigation into what occurred. And I think at the end of the day, the evidence is going to be there, and it's going to strongly suggest that a lot of things went wrong that should not have from the beginning. And I truly do believe that. And I'm going to have belief in the system, is that the system, the larger system, is going to do a lot better job than what we saw there in Glenn County, which I think is just horribly embarrassing to the police and the public safety community across this country.
I would agree with that. I just want to say to Cheryl DeWitt, who had a comment. I mean, she's right with respect to the video, right? If it wasn't for the video, where would we be? Just in terms of wrapping up, with respect to this topic, just as an update to everyone, we know that a new district attorney has been appointed, independent, African-American woman who apparently has exceptional credentials. We're looking at her there. She has promised to really get to the bottom and the root of it. We trust that she will. We also know that there were 3 DAs prior to her, unfortunately, as it relates to not doing the right thing or just engaging in some shenanigans. And at the end of the day, Doc, I think you'd agree, whatever happens, we need the community to understand it was investigated thoroughly, it was investigated and vetted fairly, and ultimately we know and understand the true facts. And then, of course, there was an ask of the Department of Justice at the federal level to get into. And just transitioning from this, we just wanted to, we know we have, only 8 minutes left. We wanted to talk about the issue concerning a case in Louisville. That is of Miss Taylor, who was shot, Breonna Taylor, in her own home. And apparently the police were allegedly executing some kind of warrant, and she was shot dead. A woman who was on the front line. She was an EMT. She was looking to become a nurse. She had such a promising future. And the police going guns a-blazing, and she was shot and killed. You see the bullet holes there. And I think, no person, while they're in their own home, much less sleeping, after midnight, should be shot and killed. What say you as to this issue, Dr. A?
Well, there was a number of things. This warrant was issued as a no-knock warrant, based on, I guess, whatever probable cause that they had. That means they can just go up to the house and just get the door in and go straight in. There's always been a lot of controversy around no knocks. But in this particular case, if I were chief of police in that community and I got that phone call that morning of this incident taking place, there's going to be a lot of questions that I would need answered. When you had 2 people lying in bed there, and who clearly were not, from what we know, were not suspects in this case whatsoever. Now, I don't know what led them to that particular house, that particular address, under those particular circumstances. But there's a lot of questions going to have to be answered here in terms of the execution of this warrant. And what was the warrant executed for? Were they at the right house? Did they have the right information? And did they give accurate information to the judge for him or her to sign that warrant as well? But it is very, very hard to explain to the American public, any part of the American public, that I go into a house, meaning I being a chief of police, my officers going to a house in the early mornings, go in, do a no-knock, and people on the other side, allegedly not knowing they were the police, did what probably any other homeowner would do to protect themselves, and then they get shot and killed. I think we need to know more about this in terms of the execution, what that warrant was for, the execution of it, what was the preparation around the execution of this warrant, and what was the supervision around the execution of this warrant. So I don't want to say too much about it, but I do know this. It is very, very hard to explain to the American people and to the families and to that community there in Louisville, anywhere around this country, that you had a young woman who had served her time helping COVID patients in that community, asleep in the middle of the night, with her significant other. And there's a whole lot of questions that need to be asked. It is horrible. It is tragic. And I hope that somehow they're able to explain it. But more importantly, it's going to be important that an outside agency or agencies go in and do that investigation, because that's going to give that investigation far more credibility if Louisville try to do it themselves, which I hope they don't. And there needs to be oversight of this investigation all the way up to the state level, meaning the governor's office. And everybody need to have eyes on this, and everybody need to ask the tough questions. That comes with being a police chief or sheriff today in our country. And we have to be able to answer those questions, but we want to get to the real facts.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Dr. A. And to my friend Khadijah Brown, I agree with you as well. If you're going to execute a warrant, you should check the address, check it again, and check it again. There's an indication, doctor, just to let everyone know, and we're going to leave this topic, but just as an update. Number one, the indication is that the suspect was already in custody. So why they were there is beyond me. Number two, there's an indication that was not even, obviously, the proper address or complex. So that's a problem. And which leads to number three, again, that it should not have occurred. And so we're just hopeful that an investigation does happen. But, I'm often tired about talking about investigations because, if things are done right, you don't need an investigation, and people are alive. And unfortunately, they aren't done right. And in our system, only thing we can address people with is money after the fact. And I think that the family would love their loved one, whatever check they may or may not get from the government thereafter, because things were screwed up. So the prayers certainly to them, which again, I'm tired of talking about hearts and prayers. I'd rather have the person in front of me. Having said that, Doc, I want to end with you on a high note, not those low notes, because we want to, right, at Dr. A's behest. Again, he's the psychologist. He's the doctor. He wants to make sure people are right, people feel good, people are okay. And we know that our 2020 graduates were shortchanged just a little bit, maybe a lot of bit. But nonetheless, we're proud of you. So I have to ask, Obama crushed it yesterday, giving his presentation. Doc, what do you have to say to the class of 2020? Go ahead, Obama. You killed it yesterday. Yeah, great words of wisdom.
Yeah, but, here's what I would say to all the graduating classes that are out there, both in high school, college, graduate school, or whatever. We certainly are in a very unprecedented time in this country. But as you have already heard before, there's no greater time for you to be coming into play in this country, because it's going to take your youthfulness, it's going to take your talents and all the education and training and experience that you have acquired to help us continue to move forward in this nation. And all of us have a leadership role. Leadership is not, should not be placed on any one particular person or any one particular entity. But we have leadership that we can give in our homes, in our communities, right on the block that we live in, providing leadership in our families, with our friends. But this is a great time for you. And I'm sorry that you were not able to have your graduations and your celebrations and all the things that traditionally go on during this time of the year. But I'm going to tell you something. What you have been graced with is an opportunity to show all of us in this country and around the world all the talents and desires and the love that you bring to make a great difference to this nation and to help continue to bring this nation together so we can continue to do wonderful things and great things for everybody, for everyone. That's one important. That's my piece, Joey. And I'm going to leave it right there. Congratulations to the class of 2020.
Well, I will just say this. I concur with the doctor's remarks, and let me just take it a step further. Your talent, skills, and abilities are so welcome at this point in time. We know that we're undergoing this pandemic that's horrific and that you were shortchanged in so many ways. But understand this, we don't need a ceremony to let you know you're great. We don't need a ceremony to congratulate you, to honor you, to respect you, and to tell you that, you know what, we cannot wait for you to come out here with your ideas, with your suggestions, with your values, with your thoughts, with your views, with your hard work, with your beliefs, and with all that you bring to bear to make society the better place. And it's going to be a better place, and that's going to be a tribute to you. And so we know that it's been a tough time for you. No proms and no parties and none of the traditional things we do and the family big dinners and everything else to tell you we love you, to embrace you, to hug you, and to do all those things. But we're doing it to you virtually. We're doing it with you virtually, and we're celebrating you and the fine work that you do. And so keep it up. Welcome aboard. And now's the time more than ever for you to show the world that you got this, because at the end of the day, you do.
We're depending on you. Tell all your friends and all your family. We'll be back here next Sunday, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern. You can check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, hit any of those social media sites. Me and Joey are going to be back here next Sunday. Please let everybody know. Look forward to it. Thank you all. My man, Joey Jackson.
Peace, love, and happiness. Take care, Dr. A.
All right.
Bye,
See you all. Bye.